Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. Today is our second webinar in our series, Grief Unmasked. Today, we are going to be talking with Ustadha Kaltun Karani, and she's going to be talking about a conversation beyond sibling loss. So what I want to do is I want to show you something. So this is Intentionally Rising. Lifestyle Design for the Conscious Muslim. It's by our speaker today, Ustadha Kaltun Karani. It's a workbook. And what I loved about this is it just asks you, sometimes you need a really good question. You need a really good question to help focus your thoughts. I was really enjoying that. But there was a section here I wanted to quickly an excerpt read to you and listen to it in the backdrop of grief. So like the section I'm about to read. So it's on page 6 and it says, perfection is for Allah alone. So don't pressure yourself to be perfect. Do, however, appreciate the unique set of qualities, traits, and strengths that Allah gave you so you can shine and make an impact in this world. Owning our strength helps us live in gratitude and a complete authenticity. And with the backdrop of grief, I thought that was a really good message about not trying to be perfect, or sometimes do grief properly. Sometimes we feel the pressure. Am I grieving properly? It's just you do your best and just do it with an Allah-centric view and just be authentic. And I think that's part of what really even got us to do this series, is just trying to get a very real understanding of the lived experience. Okay, we'll be introducing Ustadha. So Ustadha Kaltun Karani, mashallah, what an incredible bio. So she is the founder of the Hikmah Academy, where she teaches tafsir and Islamic sciences to work on spiritual growth and personal development. She works as a mental health therapist and is the author of the workbook. I already showed you that. Intentionally Rising, Lifestyle Design Choices for the Conscious Muslim. Ustadha Kaltun is also a student of HIFTH, and she has recently completed her diploma in Islamic psychology from the Cambridge Muslim College. She also has 2 bachelor's degrees, one from Al-Maghrib Institute and one in business and marketing from Ohio State University. She also has her master's in education and counseling from University of Wisconsin at in River Falls. And Ustadha Kaltun, she enjoys reading, swimming, and having meaningful conversations with people. Mashallah, my type of sister. Okay, so without further ado, let's bring on Ustadha. Assalamu alaikum, Ustadha, how are you?
Assalamu alaikum, Sadia. So good to meet you. I'm doing well.
Good to meet you too. How are you doing?
Doing wonderful. I'm so proud of this initiative, though, mashallah. I'm sorry to hear that it started because Amira experienced multiple losses. I didn't know that. But I know I've loved the initiative since I've seen it first. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put barakah in it, and may Allah put barakah in the session today.
Jazakallah khair. I wanted to tell you something. So last night, I messaged Ustadha and I told her about how at the sessions we like to have a drink. So, but that inspired me because Ustadha, you mentioned, you're like, oh yeah, candles and all the coziness. And I was like, candles? I was like, ooh, I don't trust myself with a candle, but I did set up my diffuser there. So I have sandalwood wafting through the air right now. And my healing drink, the most healing drink of all,
water.
I'm severely dehydrated. So I need that. What do you have there? You just showed it to me. What is it?
Hibiscus tea. I have my water here too. I already had my coffee for the morning, and I usually I like hot drinks, but I don't like to drink more than 1 cup of coffee. So this is hibiscus.
Mashallah, I think I've had it before. It's like a floral, like almost like a sweet taste, right?
I don't know if it's sweet. It's really weird. I can't describe the taste. It's not bitter and it's not sweet. It's like it's the beginning of sour.
Okay. I just realized, isn't that kind of appropriate for our session? It's like kind of bitter, kind of sweet, but something beautiful in the end,
In
right?
between, in
Okay.
between, yes, yes.
Okay. Alhamdulillah.
Mashallah. Alhamdulillah. And
Alhamdulillah.
thank you for showing the book. I'm amazed that you already have it and you showed
Oh
and you had
yeah.
a connection
So
with
I
that.
love the setup. Mashallah, it's just a lot of thought-provoking questions in there. You know, just to like help direct your thinking. I was really
Yes.
enjoying it. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair.
Alhamdulillah.
So
وإياك.
Bismillah, I think we'll get started. Usada, I think let's start off with what the beginning of your grief journey. So maybe if in your own words you could explain to us like what happened in COVID 2021 for you? What happened?
Okay, so Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu salam ala Rasulillah. So in 2021, this was like a year and a half in the summer. It was about a year and a half after COVID started. So things kind of became loose, like lightened, but
Mm,
the fear of COVID was still around, right?
right.
We were still seeing COVID experiences.
Mhm,
I have a brother who's 11 years older than me.
mm,
I have many brothers, but this one, he's my mom's second oldest, second child, second son. And he lived here in Minnesota with his wife and 9 children. And so that summer, my mom really wanted us to go to Hajj. And so for you to go to
sure.
Hajj, you need to get your COVID vaccine.
Right.
And my brother really didn't want to get the COVID vaccine. I don't know. He just didn't want it, right?
Yeah.
My mom kept on pushing him, and pushing him to go to Hajj. And so he applied for his passport. The plan was for him to go to Hajj, and then Saudi announced that Hajj that year was
Yeah.
going to be only for locals.
Uh,
So my brother was like, "Yep, I'm not doing this vaccine." And my mom kept on pushing him, but I remember telling my mom, like, respect his boundaries. Like he doesn't want it, khalas, let him be. And so he took his wife and kids on a vacation to Ohio. So we all used to live in Ohio. My sister-in-law's family still lived there. My other brother and his wife and kids lived
mhm,
there. He went to Ohio for vacation. And on his way, they were transit in Florida. And you
mm,
know how like Florida is nice and beautiful. And he sent us a voice note in the family group. He doesn't talk a lot in the family group.
mm.
But that time he messaged us and he said, "I'm in Florida and I see what looks like Jannah outside."
SubhanAllah.
Subhanallah, right? So he goes to Ohio, and because he used to live in Ohio, he goes to see a lot of his friends, his family. I remember the last conversation I had with my brother was the day of Eid al-Adha, and they were staying at a hotel. He was like on his bed, leaning back. His wife was next to him, and he just had the biggest smile ever. Um, and subhanallah, right after Eid, he developed a cough. He developed a cough and it kept on getting worse and
Mm,
worse and worse. And then one day he couldn't, like, it was nonstop. So
uh,
he went to the emergency room and he took his oldest daughter with him, his oldest biological daughter. So he has a stepdaughter that he raised, but this was his
yeah.
biological daughter. They went together, and as soon as he went in there, they told him he had COVID, and that they gave him the option, the treatment options,
Mm,
and one of them was the ventilator, the breathing machine. It's not just the oxygen machine; it's like a deeper one.
okay.
And my brother said he didn't want it. He told them, "I do not want a ventilator."
Mm,
So he was in the hospital, and my other brother went to see him the next day. Immediately, they put him on a oxygen machine. And that was Thursday. I remember the next week on Wednesday, like all this time, my brother is messaging us, my other brother, and telling us, Duran is getting better. He's, improved today. I felt like maybe my brother was a bit in denial about what was really happening because
right.
my brother's situation kept on getting worse.
Mm,
Um, and he once like sent us a WhatsApp video where he allowed Dulan and my brother to be on camera. And the interesting thing, like, I know there was COVID. I know we heard about stories where people could not see their family, but my brother was being allowed to go inside every single day. He was getting
Oh,
time where he could go inside and be with him. Same with his wife. She would get time where she could go in and see him. But then it was like a week later, Wednesday, where I spoke with the nurse. This is the first time I spoke with the nurse. And she said, "What are you guys planning to do to make it easy for him? Because he's not going to make it." And this was the first time I heard that. And it was a shock. Like it was a complete shock. I remember um, that this woman was telling me that he needed a ventilator, that he needed morphine to ease his time so that he can die with ease. And I'm going like, what is like, this is unbelievable. Like and so when I talked to my family and I said this, they're like, only Allah knows when he's going to die. We're not going to talk about death. Like, this is not going to happen.
mm,
I'm just really conflicted. I'm like, this woman is speaking from like she's seeing his numbers, she's seeing how he's really doing. She's not making it up, you know. I remember Sadia going outside my house and just walking and crying and crying and crying and crying. I think that's the like, and I was literally almost screaming. Like it was a loud cry, you know, and I the shock of being told that someone you love is dying. Like this was the first time that I felt like this,
yeah.
you know. So Alhamdulillah, that night, my mother and I and my cousin got a car and we drove to Ohio. It's about a 12-hour drive. And
12 hours.
so we started driving late at night, huh?
No, I was just saying 12 hours, subhanAllah.
Yes, yes. I would go to Ohio a lot if it wasn't for those 12 hours. Qadar Allah, we got into the car, we drove, and when we were about an hour or 2 hours away from the hospital, um, they called us and they said, tell the family to come and say their goodbyes. And Sadia, like the difficult thing for me at the time was my family was completely not accepting what was happening. Nobody was speaking as if my brother was going to die. I don't know if we knew how to even do that.
Yeah.
My brother, who was there taking care of him, they were very close. So I
Mhm.
think now, like, you know, when we hear the statement of Umar radiallahu anhu, when the Prophet ﷺ died, he said, I would kill anybody who said the Prophet died. I
Yeah.
realized my brother was having like symptoms like that. Like he just would not accept it. He was just not accepting it. Um, and so when we went to the hospital, they allowed us to go in. They had us wear, sorry, um, sometimes emotions can make you feel cold out
Yeah.
of nowhere. Like not even cold,
I
like I
have a
just feel,
blankie with me on my legs.
yeah, yeah. SubhanAllah. So they had us go in, put on mask, put on a head thingy, and then an overall, like
Mm,
made out of cloth, and just
mm,
wrap it around. Um, and they had people go in, like 2 or 3 people at a time. And I remember when I went in, all I could say to my brother was, he was a wonderful person. He was a man that loved Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who loved Quran, who loved his wife and children. My mom would say he was one of the easiest child, like one of her children to take care of. Um, Growing up, I always felt like he was the kindest person to me. He was 11 years older than me. And he was like a father figure. Like my dad had passed away, and so he was the oldest around, right?
mm.
Um, and I remember like he had a breathing mask on his face. He couldn't talk. He couldn't take it off to talk to us. But you could see the tears. You know, when tears dry up on your face, and they turned white. And I was just thinking, like, what could these tears mean so much? You know, like somebody who's been told while he's fully conscious that he's slowly going to deteriorate and die and not have the ability to sit up and say last words to his family or his wife and kids. Um, Yeah, let me know if you have a question. There's a lot more, but
Oh,
take a break.
subhanallah. It's just amazing to me, subhanallah, how you're describing the experience as you experienced it, but you're also putting yourself in his place
Mhm,
and what that would have felt like. And it's so powerful, and I think it's very important to hear, because sometimes, I mean, I know with my experience with grief, I had a parent who passed away. I would often put myself and try to figure out, what were they thinking and what were their thoughts. So even to hear you say that, I think that might be validating for a lot of people to realize this is actually quite normal,
mhm.
maybe. Like we
Yeah.
do wonder, like, what were they thinking? Thinking a lot of things. I was actually writing some notes while you were talking, and this isn't a question initially I'd planned to ask, but I feel like I must, because this has come up in our Healing
Mhm,
Together sessions earlier. And you touched on it a bit, and I kind of just want to pull on that thread a little bit more. It's a whole denial about what's about to happen, because it happens so quick, and so many
mhm,
people find themselves in that situation where it's sometimes hours, minutes, months, or even years, but sometimes
mhm,
we can't accept it, or sometimes the people around us can't accept it. And I remember speaking to a sister recently who was talking about how she had been in that state because it was so difficult for her to accept that her family member was passing. After he passed, she had this immense anger at herself for not coming terms with to like reality, and
mhm,
she's like, had I been more accepting, I could have taken better care, or I could have prepared myself, I could have been there for my family differently. And there's a
mhm,
sense of guilt and anger, sometimes at yourself, or
mhm,
even sometimes at other people, like other family
mhm,
members. It's like,
mhm.
you almost want to say, if only you had accepted, like,
Right.
you could have done XYZ, XYZ. And it's just, I'm just thinking, just from like, like a spiritual and Islamic framework, like you did share, like, this is something so human. We know that the Sahaba and like Umar radiallahu anhu, he experienced that. So who are we not to experience it? But I was just wondering if you could just share more of just from like a spiritual lens, like how do you work through that, and how do you make peace with yourself, or peace with yourself about how others were behaving? And I know it's a lot, but you can
Yeah.
take some
Yeah.
time to, yeah.
You know, I remember towards the end of this experience, or after my brother had passed, one of my brothers said to me, he watches a show, and I don't know, the doctors, is it, where he sees people, um, when somebody is dying, and then the family members start to fight and disagree about how things should go. And he said because he watches that show, he was better able to understand what our family was going through because, like I mentioned, somebody going through denial, me crying and feeling like Surat Yasin was really helpful for me to read. Like when that woman said to me, "Your brother's dying," I accepted. Khalas, Dulana's life is coming to an end. What do we do now? Where some people were still thinking, and this is what I think to myself, like I've accepted he was dying. And
Mm.
just like that sister that you mentioned, she was angry that she didn't accept it. I was thinking, how come you accepted it so quickly? How come
Mm.
you lost hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can turn things around? We're never gonna be
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I wonder if I ever had made dua, ya Allah, like heal him and help him get better. Or did I make dua and say, Ya Allah, just make it? I remember making dua, Ya Allah, make it easy for him. Ya Allah, make it easy for him. But what, you see what I mean? Like
There's
we
like
all,
either way, there's that guilt. Yeah.
there is a guilt and there is a something that,
Yeah.
and this is human nature, like the
Yeah.
seven stages of grief.
Yeah.
They include the denial, the anger, the guilt. At the end we have acceptance and
Right.
hope for the future. And as human beings, you see that regardless of your spiritual state, regardless of your religious
Yeah.
level, we're gonna go through this.
Yeah.
You know, my brother was an imam, the one that I'm thinking like he became so angry and so in denial that he told the nurse like we want to take him out of the hospital. And I was thinking, what does he mean we're taking him out of the hospital? But this is a man who's grieving, and this was his way of grieving his brother.
Yeah.
That they were very close, and you know, like closer than me and my brother could have
Mhm.
been. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I feel like the stages and the way we respond spiritually, they're different for everybody. But then again, like the Prophet ﷺ has taught us that we manage what we say with our tongue. We take responsibility for our behavior, for our actions. We can't change how our heart feels,
Yeah.
and how it responds. Um, can I finish the rest of what had
Please,
happened
please.
after?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So that day when they had us all see him, um, I was really amazed. I felt like this was a rahmah for my brother that everybody that came to visit got to see him. Um, that was almost unheard of for people who had COVID. Like hospitals were not doing that. Um, there was, like that was on a Thursday or a Friday that we got there. My brother didn't die until Sunday morning. Um, and all this time, obviously, like, and this comes up a lot, and this is what I meant. My brother was like, he watched us in shows and he felt like, okay, I know this happens, but it was new to me that there was a lot of tension within the family
Yeah.
about what to do, about what actions to take, who has the say, who's gonna get angry. Like it was just everybody was tense,
Yeah.
and we don't really talk about how to expect things to go in the hospital. I remember being really, really, really angry with one of my cousins, and I later told myself, like Kaltun, this was his way of grieving as well, to force
Mhm.
others like to whatever he was doing. It was like, this is when people are grieving and they're angry or they're feeling guilt, they're going to have behaviors, and these
Yeah.
behaviors are going to look different and they could create tension within people. But what I found solace in, um the end, like towards the end of my brother's life, is that
Mhm.
he was able to get um medication that helped him, that eased the way for him, like morphine, anxiety meds. One of the doctors explained to me that the person is struggling, they're fighting themselves to breathe, and
Mm.
so these medications help, and then with that comes anxiety and feeling like you're alive, you're conscious,
Yeah.
and you can't help yourself breathe, and it goes for a long time. So those medications helped. After he died, the nurse, I watched the nurse before the night before he died. I remember standing there and watching her, and she washed his face, she brushed his teeth, she used Zamzam water. We all made dua for him. Quran was playing in his room. So I pray that he had a peaceful ending.
Inshallah.
I kept on thinking of the verses in Surah Fussilat when the angel of death comes, and along with him comes the angels of Rahmah, and they comfort the person and they tell the person, don't worry, we're taking you to the place that you have been promised. And my mind was so, when you're thinking in medical terms, like the way they speak to you, the person is suffering, make it easy for them. What is, and I'm like, this is what you're telling me in medical sense, but in spiritual sense, Allah said that these angels can make it easy. And I prayed, like, yeah, Allah, I hope that he also didn't feel so much pain, that these angels, inshallah, alleviated the pain from him.
SubhanAllah. SubhanAllah.
Yeah,
Incredible.
yeah,
And it's just the way you described about like even just thinking about it, being alive and struggling to breathe. It's not something I mean, I'm sure I know with like asthma and so on, some people do experience it, but just on a long-term basis, 100%. Even the thought of it creates a bit of anxiety that you could not actually, like, why is my body not doing this? Like, why is my body betraying me? And then how you're describing that, and then what happened right towards the end. I loved how you said the nurse brushed his teeth with Zamzam. That's beautiful. Like, was that something like your family like explained to her, and she was, subhanallah,
Yeah,
it's just so it
yeah.
sounds very serene and peaceful. Just a couple of things there because I was just like making notes here. Is there a reason you guys chose Surah Fussilat? Or
Is
just
there a
event
reason?
you
No,
you
no. So that was just my reflection. I
okay.
think my brother was listening to Yasin.
Okay, okay.
Listening
Mashallah,
to
yeah.
Surah, yeah.
And I
Yeah.
remember
Is
you, and I was just saying,
uh,
I remember you mentioned earlier when you first found out you were also reciting Surah
yeah.
Yasin at that time.
The righteous predecessors, they used to recite Yasin
Yeah,
when they're told about the death of a person or read it to the person that is dying. It's supposed to
yeah,
like comfort them, you know?
yeah, okay.
Um, and so that's why I read it when I was like when I got the news, like, okay, come, these are his last moments.
Mm,
And I'm thinking that's probably why my brother turned it on for him.
mashallah. I love that.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
thinking, like a lot of people, right? Like I heard so many stories of people passing in different phases during COVID. A lot of what I would hear is um very different than, what your family experience was like. They would be in the hospital room, no one could visit, they'd have the iPad, and subhanallah, or even after, because of like, the physical and social distancing, like you couldn't even hug people. Like, and I was just like, that to me was so hard to even process. I can't even imagine living through that, about not being able to be close physically or, even like socially. Alhamdulillah, it sounds like, the hospital was quite understanding, and you had different places had different rules in
mm,
place. So like I
yeah,
was just, when I was listening to you, I was like, what a rahma in that too, that he
yeah.
was in a hospital where they had rules where you could meet.
Uh, we had a family friend that died the month before that. And he wasn't, nobody could see him, nobody could visit him. And he was in the hospital for a much longer time. So that's why I said it was a rahma, like that this happened for him because it wasn't, I don't know, maybe the rules had changed. Because yeah, with COVID, like things were changing
Yeah,
rapidly,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Unexpectedly, things were changing. So alhamdulillah that we had the opportunity to be with him and hold him and talk to him. Um, alhamdulillah for that.
Alhamdulillah,
Yeah.
alhamdulillah. And
Yeah.
Allah is the master planner, and there's, there's wisdom in however He chooses to take
Right.
something. Like subhanAllah.
Right.
I
Right.
wanted to oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. No. No. Go ahead. I know
Okay.
your question is coming up.
So I was just thinking, how you were talking about your brother's experience, the one who was an imam and he had seen the shows, and so he's reacting a certain way. And then you mentioned this cousin, he's grieving a different way, and you're saying to yourself, okay, this is grief, he is grieving, that's why this is happening. Um, a lot of, you know, if you haven't seen death closely, one of the things, and it's an awakening or a rude awakening, either way, is when you realize what happens when everyone close to the person reacts differently. Most families do not have a conversation about, if so and so were going to pass, this person is going to be the one making decisions. So when
Mhm.
it happens, if it's sudden or even known, there's chaos because everyone's feelings and just organizing, and this is the right thing and that is the right thing. It's very difficult on top of you missing the person and the sadness you're feeling. And I'm just thinking, like, with that whole situation of, you know, the different family members and people close to him reacting all differently. And you did mention this a bit, it's just, accepting, okay, this person is grieving this way, that person's grieving this way. Was there anything when you look back you found, maybe some of the lessons I can carry forward for how to manage a family situation like that, like something that could be done differently, or I don't know, any gems from when you reflect back on like how
Oh, yeah.
everyone's wires get tangled.
Yeah. This is something that I've talked to one of my brothers about.
Mm.
Um, as Muslims, we're encouraged to have a will,
Yeah.
and part of having a will, or the system that my brother used, it asks, what is your medical
Mm.
um like preferences when it comes to being on a ventilator, being on life support?
Yeah.
Who do you want to make those decisions for you?
Yeah.
And I remember he said we need to have these conversations for our mom. And I was thinking, like, yeah, it's important, but I could see people freaking out and saying, what are you talking about? Like, well, let's not talk about this right now. And this is like, people are different when it comes to the possibility of difficult emotions or the possibility of death coming. Even
Yeah.
though we know it's real, we want to act like it's not going to happen,
Yeah.
right? And it really does reduce conflict in the hospital. Like, so when I was telling you, my brother, he when he went into the hospital that Thursday night, he said he did not want a ventilator. And his 19-year-old daughter was with him. And she was able to tell family, like, he said no,
Mm.
he said no. But this other cousin was saying, let's override that decision he made. Let's get his wife to override it. Let's push for it. So I remember they got a doctor to go in and ask my brother. And my brother couldn't talk, but he did this with his hand,
Mm.
you know? So what we were talking about was, can we respect his decision? Can we be okay with that? Because sometimes, like, the living, they don't want the possibility that this person, خلص, their time came, they're about to die. We can't face that. We want to do what we can do. And the opposite is someone who, like me, completely believed the doctor, and خلص, gave up and thought, he's dying, let me make dua for
Yeah.
him. Right? Whereas somebody
Yeah.
else is like, no, we're gonna fight this, and we're gonna. And so people have different ways that they react, different opinions, different ways that they go about it. I think
Mm.
what would be healthy, what would be important, is to say, what did the sick person themselves
Yeah.
want?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. I love that because, sorry, I think I cut you off. You were about to say something.
No, no, no. Go ahead. Go ahead.
What I was thinking while you were saying that is because I think every person is having the individual struggle of, okay, I'm placing my trust in Allah, but I want to tie my camel, so to speak. And everyone thinks the tying of the camel is done a bit differently. But I think you're right. I think, like the buck stops at what does the dying person wish? Like it is
Yeah.
their call, right? And
Yeah.
especially, but you're right, if you've had
Absolutely.
it's difficult, but trying to have those conversations ahead of time um, might help ease some of that. Not to say that things will go like smoothly once one were to get to that stage,
Yeah.
because at that point people can be like, forget that plan, right? So you do your best.
Yeah.
You do your best,
Yeah.
right?
You do your best. Do
Do
your
your
best.
best.
I think what is
Yeah.
especially difficult for us as Muslim families is that everybody, like, who is the close knit family that will make the decision.
Yeah.
That's difficult for us.
Yeah.
Because what about the cousin? You're gonna tell the cousin that no, you don't have a say on this.
Yeah.
The aunt that cost, like,
Yeah.
to me, there was a lot of chaos.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes, like, what I wished we had, because my brother's kids were there,
Yeah.
and they were seeing this disagreement and all of this. And I'm thinking, this would have been a better time to help these children understand what's happening.
Yeah. Subhan.
If they could have go stand in front of their dad's room, what would they like? The Quran we could have read for him, the du'as we could have made for him. I feel like that was a missed opportunity, you know?
Yes. No, no, no.
Not that it wasn't done at all, but
No, no.
like these disagreements that happen
Yeah.
took, yeah.
They took like more of a priority where it could have been, okay,
E-
let's try to focus more on the kids. And I actually wanted to bring that up because that was something, when I read your story and I was, even when you explained it, like, subhanAllah, even one child losing a parent is so painful and, like a really intense journey for them to start. 9 children, subhanallah, like, may Allah make everything easy for them. Like, I'm just wondering, like, how did your family rally around them? How did you guys cope? Like, what does their healing journey look like? Any, things you've picked up over time, you're like, you know what, for kids specifically, I think these are some good ideas. Like, just want to talk about the kids, like what has been helpful.
Yeah. You know, they attended, they all attended the janaza. Um, and I think that talking to them, explaining it to them, their mother couldn't. Their mother was so emotionally distraught, and she was that way for a very long time. But talking to the kids and explaining what had happened and talking about like the possibility of him having the Jannah, what it looks like, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can honor him and how we would see him. I remember what my niece asked me, like, she said, I can't believe a person is just done. Like, we'll never
Mm,
see them again. And I was like, Edo, like, Auntie, of course we will see them again. And I remember pulling out the verses in Surah Al-Tur and reading it with her because she was older, right? So we read those verses together. And she was amazed because in Surah Al-Tur, Allah talks about Jannah and He talks about people who loved one another, family members, and how they would be conversating with each other. So I was like, you're gonna see him and you're gonna be able to touch him and hold him like this. And that was so comforting for her. The younger ones, it was just to sit around and have a time where we remembered my brother and their best memories of him,
mm,
you know, and to just laugh about it and to also, and this was happening a lot, and I obviously couldn't control it. This is a cultural thing that comes up at the time of death, is whenever there was a kid crying, accepting it, normalizing it,
mm,
allowing them to have more and more, like like to cry more if you need it. But then what we would see is like people were being yelled at for crying. Where we told, don't cry, like, oh, he's gonna be punished, and you're like, this is not true, but this is what we believe. This is what we say. My sister-in-law could not express her emotions. Like, there were 2 years police standing around and telling her that she wasn't being patient enough when she did.
mm,
So doing things like that really helped for me. Like, I remember me, my kids, and my mom moved into their home, and we stayed there for about a month just to be with them. And I remember every night we used to play my brother's favorite reciter reading, like, Quran. Every single night we used to recite that, read that, or have it, like, listen to it. A year, 2 years later, I realized when I went to visit them that they can't handle listening to it anymore, that my sister-in-law does not like it to play in the house because one of my nephews, like, he'll become emotional, he'll remember his dad. And I'm like, it's okay for him to feel that, but she just realized, like, it was better to not play
mm,
it anymore. So there's different takes on how to support a
mm,
person, the kid's emotional journey. um I remember feeling so, not myself, in October. Like, he died in August. The family immediately moved to Ohio. They ended their lease and they moved to Ohio because they needed to be closer to other family members. And that was a big loss for me and my kids because, like, they were our go-to family, right? And then if a year later my mother moved with them, and so that was double hard for me. But 2, 3 months after he died, I remember feeling, my son said this, I didn't notice it. My son said, since, Apti or uncle died, my mom has become really angry.
mhm,
And I didn't notice the connection.
yeah,
But he said it multiple times. And I remember, like, feeling heavy and empty and, like, just not myself.
yeah.
So that was the first time I scheduled myself to go to Umrah. I went for a Umrah, and I remember doing Umrah for my brother after I did mine. And in the tawaf, I made dua for each one of my nephews and nieces and nephews, because that was my biggest fear. Like now that their father is not in the picture, their mother is grieving, and her grief would become like really hard. I felt like, yeah, Allah, take care of them. They're so little. Anything could happen like without that protection of a father. Um, and it comforted my heart, like doing tawaf and naming each one of them and thinking about them and making dua for them. It it helped me. It helped me feel like they're in the hands of Allah. They're in the protection of Allah.
They are, subhanAllah. And I'm just thinking as you're sharing that, like all those things you said, like for different ages, like with, your niece that you could sit down and go through the tafsir of Surah Tur with, that was age appropriate for her. You could
Yeah,
do that. It sounds like the 19-year-old, she was probably at a different level as well. And then younger kids or all kids or even the adults, everyone crying is just let them cry. Let them
let them cry.
express. Like we say to ourselves, like we say to our friends, like it's okay, let it out, let it out. But if a child's letting out, like why are we policing them, right? Like
I
they need to
I
like let it out too.
do. I
SubhanAllah.
do.
Um, I just want to let the participants know I'm going to be asking two more questions, and after that, we'll jump into the Q&A. So if you guys want to start typing in your questions in the Q&A box, we'll have them ready for once we're done with our next couple of questions here. And I might actually save some of my questions for there too, because I'm realizing I have a lot, but I want to give the participants a chance first. So I'll go to our two standing questions. And so can I just acknowledge one thing before we move on? I just wanted to acknowledge how your sister-in-law was feeling. I cannot even imagine. It was just reminding me of Sister Asma Hussein when she was on at the last webinar and just talking about how it's exactly with the wife, like there's a tears police and like you just,
Mhm.
like you're not allowed to cry because it's like, oh, what will the children? And you have to take care of, because you have to take care of XYZ. And it's just so hard. And, sometimes the only option is going numb, right? It's the
Yeah.
only way to survive is to go numb. But, may Allah make it easy on her heart and your entire family's hearts.
Mhm.
So along the lines of the tier police, so
Mhm.
two of our standard questions that we like to ask our speakers is, what is on your list of what not to do around grieving people? Like, what are some problematic behaviors people have? And usually coming from a very good place. They mean well, well-intentioned, but it's just hurtful, awkward, or it's just the advice would be
Yeah.
to not do it around grieving people.
Yeah. One is to do not ignore the fact that they're going through difficult emotions,
Mm,
especially children.
yeah.
Um, my father died when I was 10 years old, and I was told there was going to be funeral in the home to go play because apparently like I wasn't feeling the emotions. And I bottled. I remember releasing that feeling when I was 34 years old, you know? Um, I remember I was sitting in one of my counseling classes, and one of my classmates shared that she sat with a fifth grader.
Mhm.
And I was a fifth grader when this happened.
Yeah,
She sat with a fifth grader who was talking about the death of her grandmother, and she just comforted her. So she shared that story and that
yeah,
experience.
yeah,
I got up, went to the bathroom, and just started crying. And all I could think about was the moment my father died 24 years before, you know? So, the Prophet ﷺ even modeled that we acknowledge difficult emotions with children. Like he went to Anas ibn Malik's brother when he lost his bird, and he said to him, "What happened to your birdie?"
yeah,
Like such a beautiful way to comfort a child.
yeah,
And the other thing is, we think that by not talking about the person that died, we're making it easy for them. No, like we want to talk about them. We want to remember memories. We want to have have them be remembered and smile and laugh because those memories are in your head anyway.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
already there. You're already playing them, you know? So it allows you to release when you talk about the person, when you say what you loved about them, what you remember, those silly moments, those angry moments, like it allows you to release. So those are two things. Obviously, in our communities, we see the tears police and don't cry, and tears actually are healing. And even the Prophet ﷺ shed tears. They are emotional tears are healing for us.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jazakallah khair. And what you were
Yeah.
saying, it just makes me realize, when you don't acknowledge, it's like it makes people question their reality because they're living in this reality where they're living with this grief. And it's like
Mhm.
everyone around them, like the world's going on, and you're like, hello, this is also going on for me, right? Like, so important, so important. Jazakallah khair. And Jazakallah khair to the people putting their questions in the Q&A box. I can see them. So I'll just do my last question and then we'll move to the Q&A box. So our other standing question is about, and mashallah, you are an author. So if you could write an instruction manual for Kaltun in August 2021, and
Mhm.
you could talk about in the instruction manual things you've learned about the nature of grief, what would be, say, the top one or three things that you want 2021 Kaltun to know as she moves forward?
One is to, like, I think what we talked about earlier, like accepting that people's
Mm.
grief looks different.
Yeah.
Um, just accept that, and don't let it, like, I mean, of course, I was really bothered by some reactions. And if I were to accept that people's grieving looks different, it would have been easier for me.
Mm,
The other thing is, like, I really thought I was okay. I really thought I was okay. But my son saying that mom has become angry,
mm,
I didn't realize that the like I was subconsciously still feeling the anger and the hurt, and that it was manifesting in the way I behaved with my children, maybe being short with them, being angry with them. Um, and so, like, taking care of my own emotions, like, or being proactive in recognizing, in naming that this
mm.
difficulty is connected to this, or that you've shifted, even though you think you're okay. I really thought I was okay.
Yeah,
That's the thing for me. Yeah.
I love that. I like that phrase now, actually. You've shifted. We're going to use that, I
Mhm.
think. Jazakallah khair. We'll say courtesy of Ustadha Kaltun's instruction manual. You've shifted.
I like
Jazakallah
this
khair.
instructional manual.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll move into the Q&A box here. Okay, so we've touched on this a bit, but we'll still go over this question just because it's something that comes up so often. So a sister here is asking, or I mean, could be brother. We have someone here asking, how do you manage the tier police?
It's really hard, honestly, to manage them because you're going through it and this you're feeling these difficult emotions, and then you're crying and somebody tells you to stop and they start to police you. Like, it's really hard to manage them. I would say avoid them.
Mm,
I would say don't be around them. I would say, like, try your best to, and this is something that I had, alhamdulillah, going to the janaza, and after the janaza, I was with few friends that allowed me to just cry it out in the car. They did not say, don't cry. They did not say. I wish I could have taken my sister-in-law and put her with people that allowed her to feel her emotions. Um, but really, like, just avoid them because it's not a time to change people's thinking or to educate them that they're wrong. It's a
yeah,
time where you want to feel your grief and you want to have your time. So just take time away. on
Okay.
them. Do
I
not
really
be
like
around
that.
people who are not. Yeah, that Wallahu alam, that's what I think is gonna help at the time of grief.
Yeah. I like that, right? Because it's about boundaries, right? Just
Mhm.
for time, and you can always shift a boundary later, but for that time, that's what you need. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Okay.
later, when you've already had your own, you've had your cries, you know you have your own space, being around somebody that will police you like that, like you will be annoyed, but
Yeah.
you can handle them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jazakallah.
You've taken care of yourself.
Inshallah. Okay, so next one. How do you manage negative feelings about friends who don't check in? Ooh, I can
Oh,
say I
that's
relate
tough.
to this. Yeah.
Huh? What are you gonna say?
I said I can relate to this. I did have negative feelings towards people who didn't check in, but how do you manage that?
You know, this kind of is connected to what we were saying earlier. Like we think by avoiding the talking about the painful experience, it'll go away, or that we're not gonna make up like it's good. We shouldn't make a person remember the difficult stuff they went through.
Yeah.
So if that's where your friends are coming from, um, it's hard. Like, because we want support, like so who and we want support. And if they're the only friends you have, then I would say something like, hey, you guys, it hurts that you're not checking in. Being honest, being transparent. Like I said, it hurt me. This time I was going through this, I needed this. I would appreciate this. Saying it to them. If you have other friends and you know that these people are not really like they don't really care about your emotional well-being, um, then khalas, like they're not the friends
Yeah.
for
They're,
you. You
they're in a
know?
different bucket.
They're a different bucket. There's different levels of friendships, right?
Mhm.
But if there's somebody that you really care about that hasn't behaved in a way where they're showing up for you, then tell them. Tell them and let it go after that.
Yeah. SubhanAllah. And I just want to share something so quick because I did have a friend that was so close to me and I was so hurt. I kid you not, for years that I don't feel she supported me in the way that I would have liked. But someone encouraged me to have a conversation with her like many years after. And I did. And it was so therapeutic and cathartic because I learned she was going through some really insane things during that time. And in her mind, she was supporting me by not dumping it on me. So she was creating this distance. That was her way. And I was like, if we only knew what each other was going through, like subhanallah. So you're right, just communication with the close people,
Yeah,
like the people you can tell
100%.
us, and it goes a long way. MashaAllah.
Yeah. I also feel like friends or the care we receive when we need it is a risk from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can place that risk with a different person than the one we expect it from. You know? Yeah. Like so
Very true.
thinking about has Allah given me support and who did it come through friend A, B, and C or through X, Y, and Z? Like different things that we
Mhm.
didn't even think about. So learning to look at how did the support come?
I love that. MashaAllah. Quick thing before I go on to the next question, it just reminded me of a Muslim psychologist I was watching, and she was explaining because sometimes people ask the question, how do I know Allah still cares about me? And the way she answered is with what you just said. It's like Allah sends His love and His care through His people. So you don't know who that risk and that love and care is coming from. Could be from different sources than you expect, but that's Allah sending it to you. Subhanallah.
I love that.
Okay, so our sister here is asking, what is the right way to help my kids overcome the loss of their sister? Jazakumullah khairan.
That hurts a lot.
They've lost a sibling, these kids.
It hurts a lot. Um, they may never overcome it because grief is a lifelong thing. I will forever be sad and heartbroken that I lost someone that I love.
Mhm.
Um, I would say have regular times where you talk about their sister, where you remember her, where you make dua for her every single day. Like teaching them to talk to Allah about the sister, will help them make that spiritual connection that I will see my sister, inshallah, when I go to Allah as well. You know, when I go to Jannah. Um, don't avoid the conversations. Let them have these conversations. Let them remember her, write to her, write about her, make dua to Allah on her behalf, do a sadaqah for her. These are all things that connect them to her in the spiritual sense. Um, the sadness may never go. It may not go away for a very long time. What we would want to see is it limiting their function, like the way they function?
Mm,
Is it changing the way they are at school or their grades or their extracurricular activities? That's when it becomes like, okay, now we need to maybe see a specialist or a therapist about their
mm,
grief and how it's impacted them, you know? Um, Also, like, look at how recently did this happen? Like, if it was a month ago, it'll be different than a year ago, So things will slowly change.
mhm.
Things will slowly change for the better.
Inshallah. And I just want to
So,
mention this because this was mentioned in the last webinar as well. Ustad Bilal Asad, he actually has a talk, and I think it was sent out last time, where he talks about how he helped his kids with the loss of their sibling. So inshallah,
mm,
maybe we'll send that out as well. Okay, so next question. Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum assalam. How do you deal Islamically with those who feel the need to narrate how the person died to each visitor? Basically, reporters on repeat, especially sudden death. That's hard.
okay, so how do you say it one more time?
So
Like,
how do you,
they,
Islamically, how do you deal with those people who have this need to narrate to each visitor exactly how the person died? So they keep reporting exactly how the death happened, like on repeat, and it's just really difficult.
okay.
How do you deal with
And
these
it's
people?
difficult for the person hearing it or the
Yeah,
person.
yeah.
Okay. I mean, Islamically, I don't know if there is anything. Is it? Wallahu alam. I should not say, but I'm not sure. I don't feel like there's something wrong with sharing how somebody died, right? Unless we are talking about their things that need to be kept private, for the sake for their honor and stuff. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question. If we're being bothered by somebody narrating to the visitors, this is what people do. They usually share the story of how something happened. If we don't like that, I'm questioning why not. And could you tell the person, could you step away if you don't want to hear it? Allahu alam. I don't know.
Okay. And if the author, if I don't know if there'll be time, but if you want to send a follow-up clarification, you can. But I'll go to the next question. Everyone grieves differently. How do you take of others who are grieving? I wonder if there's a type of error. How do you take of others who are grieving when you are grieving the same loss? Maybe it means take care. How do you take care of others who are grieving when you are grieving the same loss?
Yeah. I mean, you're in it together. So it makes it like talking to each other about it, you know,
Mm.
um, being with each other to to process your thoughts and your feelings and your pain. Um, and together making dua, like I don't think I've emphasized the power of making dua for the person who died. Like it's in and of itself is a space to, like, it gives you the opportunity to realize that there is an akhirah, realize that we're going to another home. Like when you go to a graveyard and you visit, you say, Salamu alaikum, like the dwellers of these homes of the believing men and women, we will come after you. So it's like a reminder for yourself that you're going to go after them. So if you're grieving, somebody else is grieving, it's not about comparing whose grieving is worse. It's just being there for each other and being in one another's space and talking to each other about the person you lost and making dua for them.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking, even Exactly, because I think that's kind of what I started to do much later, but it's because like myself and my siblings were grieving in different ways, and it's like, well, how do you be there for each other? It's just, when you realize what your grief looks like and what their grief looks like, and it's different, just having a conversation about it and be like, hey, like, if I walk away when you're talking about certain memories, please don't be offended. It's not that I don't want to talk to you. I just
Mhm.
can't handle it right now. And then, that sort of understanding, and then just showing them love and support in a way that they understand it,
Yeah,
in a way that
yeah.
okay. Okay, next question here. How do you overcome grief whilst fearing that you have overstepped the limits of uh, grieving or grievance while speaking words of ingratitude or other? Yeah. So it's like, how do you, I think this even came up in the last webinar, like, how do you overcome the grief, but you have this fear that, oh my God, like, am I overstepping the bounds of what is allowed for grieving? And, you don't want to say words of ingratitude, but you still
Mm.
want to feel your emotion. Like, how
Yeah.
do you find that
Yeah.
balance?
Or like, if I'm already feeling ungrateful, I've said things where I'm like, it's not okay, it's not befitting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think that number one, acknowledging that we're there is really helpful, because that means you're aware that what you're saying and your thoughts are not aligned with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us, or how we deal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Being aware of it, and then now next time you feel it, find the opposite. Find the
Mm.
opposite. So if the person said, I don't know if that question said something about, um I'm feeling ungrateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is that what it said? Feeling ungrateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Or they're afraid of words of ingratitude. Like, they don't want to say the words of ingratitude.
Yeah, then thinking about what you're grateful for to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, verbally saying alhamdulillah, 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 and let your heart and your mind think about the different aspects of your life and what is going well in those areas of your life, while you say alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. When we feel a certain way that is not befitting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we do the opposite. that
Mhm.
is that is proper. Like, so you're feeling in gratitude, bring yourself to feel gratitude. And the way to bring yourself to feel gratitude is to actually do it, to actually think about it.
Okay. Um, I'm subhanAllah. Why does this always happen in every session? I'm noticing the time and I'm like, there's so many questions, and I'm so sorry, guys, for not being able to get to them. I mean, time is definitely limited, but inshallah, we have our future healing circles, which I'll talk about in a bit. I've been reading the questions, but I actually haven't had a chance to share with you some of the reflections that have come in. So I want to share this reflection with everyone, and then we'll start to close. I'll talk about our future events. So this is from our sister. Actually, I don't know if she wants me to say her name. So this is from our sister, and she's saying, I just wanted to thank you for mentioning Surah At-Tur. I immediately opened up my Quran and read the translation of Ayah 21. Alhamdulillah, it was so comforting. I just took a screenshot of it and sent it to my kids. I loved how you connected everything to Islam. I find so much comfort when loss is connected to Islam. I do also want to encourage you guys to check out Ustadha Kaltun's pages. Mashallah, incredible. I've actually, so I just started, I think it was on your Facebook page, a couple of your talks up there, so uplifting. And you guys mentioned earlier, she does have her workbook, Intentionally Rising. Lifestyle Design for the Conscious Muslim. I've started it. It's a great journal, especially pre-Ramadan. So I do recommend that. Jazakallah khair, Ustadha Kaltun. Did you have anything you want to share just before we sign off?
No, I'm so grateful for having this opportunity to be with you guys and talk about this. I've never done it before. But Alhamdulillah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had made this possible, made it successful.
Mm.
And thank you so much again and again.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you, Ustadha. All right, guys, inshallah, till our next event. Jazakallah khair. Take care of yourselves. Assalamu alaikum.